everybody, Betty Rhodes here from HillVets, and we are standing in front of the DC War Memorial here in Washington, DC, and we're excited to be here today with Robert Pearson from the HillVets 100 of 2019, and as a special treat, we have the person who nominated him for that honor, Elliot Mingo, and Elliot has a great history with HillVets, so we'll talk about that too. So thanks guys for being with us today.
Thank you, nice to be here.
So first and foremost, why don't each of you just tell our audience who you are and what you do?
So I'm Robert Pearson, 4-year Army veteran, having served in the 173rd Airborne Brigade. Got into veteran service after I got out of the military, had a difficult transition in understanding the VA process and how to get the benefits that I needed to start my civilian life. Started out in Minneapolis and have worked there through Boston, back out and here to DC now, and have continued to serve veterans and have been honored enough to serve here in DC under Mayor Bowser.
Awesome.
My name is Elliot Mingo. I was in the Marine Corps for 14 years, currently serving as a major in the reserves. Started my career with the DC government as outreach director and deputy director with Ross, the old director of MOVA, and then took over as a director back in January of 2019, and had the pleasure and honor of hiring Robert over here to be our first veteran service officer.
Awesome. And MOVA, for folks who don't know?
The DC Mayor's Office of Veteran Affairs.
Excellent. Okay, so for people who might be familiar with VA on a national, federal level, the Mayor's Office of Veterans Affairs, does some similar work, right?
Yeah, so every state has basically a Veteran Affairs or Veteran Service Office, and their job is to do claims on behalf of their veterans in their jurisdictions, to help with appeals, write local legislation, local programs, and they answer to their governors. Us answer to our mayor as our highest elected authority. We do the same for the 30,000 vets and their families here in DC.
Awesome. So why did you nominate Robert for the HillVets 100?
So, like all the other states had veteran service officers that were dedicated, working for the state. DC had never had that before. So back in 2018, we finally authorized to set this program up, and Robert came in as a first veteran service officer, not only having to come in as a first veteran service officer, but build the program. So that is, double the work there. Not only are you coming in as our first one ever, but you're having to build this program from scratch and kind of went above and beyond there, and really, assisted over 600 veterans in his time here, brought in over 1.7 million in claims when you compound it. Just done great work for us, so deserved the nomination.
Well, and it's so interesting because, certainly your experience with kind of navigating that benefits process, which I used to work for VA, it's not simple, not always. That gave you this really unique perspective in terms of, how you now help other veterans.
Yeah, exactly. I've been lucky enough to have training from the best veteran service organizations across the board, Veterans of Foreign Wars, Wounded Warrior Project, Paralyzed Veterans of America, on and on. And I've been able to take those skills and knowledge and interpersonal skills working with veterans and their families and really apply it here in DC to help build a reputation that folks know if you come here looking for assistance, we're not only going to treat you well, we're going to make sure you get what you deserve.
What to you is unique and special about serving DC veterans specifically?
DC wears its heart on its sleeve. You know when you're in DC because DC residents let you know that.
Yeah, we do.
Everything about it is unique, from the ways that Elliot talked about, how we're not a state. We act as though we are a state until we get our statehood, which should happen soon. But making sure that DC veterans feel like you are in your community, you're getting served by your community. It's not just another face, another name. It's actually someone that's your neighbor that lives down the street from you that you're going to see around. So making sure that you feel that connection and making sure that the people sitting across the desk don't feel as though they're just another check in the box. Yeah. They're actually being served by their neighbor.
I think it's so important also to let everybody know who doesn't live in DC that DC is more than these beautiful monuments, and they're great. It's more than that. It's more than the White House. It's more than the Capitol. There are hundreds of thousands of people who live here, many of whom serve their country. How has this past year and the challenges of COVID-19, how has that impacted your work?
Well, just like everything else, the world's turned upside down. Yeah. There's no more in-person meetings. There's no more being able to sit across the desk and work through paperwork and look through medical records with folks and help them understand the benefit process. Everything's done over the telephone, over Skype. doing things in a new, unique way to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks. And that's the biggest concern we have is, there are folks who are really vulnerable here in DC. There are homeless veterans, there are transitioning veterans, there are veterans who need specialized care that, if those fall through the cracks, those can lead to really devastating impacts. So making sure that we really adjusted the way we're doing business and making sure to communicate that to our partners and our DC veterans and families was the most important thing we did. And we put that really on the ground and ran with it right from the start, working with Director Mingo. We actually put up a policy idea to put a stop to intent to file deadlines being executed by VA because veterans who have technology limitations were going to lose out on potential benefits if they didn't do something. Luckily, Congresswoman Holmes Norton took it, ran it up the flagpole, we got it enacted, and a lot of veterans were across the country, not just here in DC, were able to save the benefits that they've earned.
Another great advocate for the citizens of DC, for sure. So have you seen, I think I know the answer to this question, but have you seen DC veterans really stepping up to help one another during this past year?
It goes way beyond just this past year. DC Veterans for Statehood have been on the ground making noise, making sure that people hear our voices, not just from a community perspective, because DC as a community wants statehood, but DC veterans understand what's at stake with that. They understand that they serve their country for these rights, for the ability to act within their own jurisdiction. And so when DC veterans see an issue arising, when they notice a problem, they really coalesce together, they come forward, they make sure everybody's sharing information, and that's how we've been able to continue progressing our office forward and making sure the veterans are getting best served.
If you could tell the public, our audience, our community, one thing that you want them to know about the work that you do with DC veterans, what would that be?
Just that, this is really difficult work, and it's difficult on both sides of the table. It's difficult to really understand and empathize with all of the different struggles that veterans and their families are having, and it's difficult for us to understand and empathize with all of the different struggles that are coming back across the table at us. So in terms of when veterans come to us with, claim conditions that they have, issues with the hospital, various other issues that they need addressed, we need to make sure we are able to empathize with all of those things. But then on the flip side, know that we're working our tails off to get all of the benefits in healthcare and education and housing and everything else that veterans in the district need. It's just a tough time right now, obviously in 2020, and the technology shortcomings that we have are abundant, but we're working our tails off to really make sure that everybody here in DC, veterans and their families, are taken care of.
Anything to add, Elliot?
He said it all. What we're trying to do is simply make sure the veterans get the benefits they're entitled to and try to make it easier for them to understand how to do that.
Yeah. Well, we cannot wait to celebrate you in person at a HillVets 100 gala sometime here in the near future, we hope. We thank you so much for the work that both of you are doing, and we're just really proud to have you as members of the HillVets family.
I really appreciate it, and I'm very honored. Thank you.
Thanks for coming to talk to us.
Absolutely.